Councilmember Laster on 71. I'm sorry, you said point of order?
Yes, I did.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
How would you like to proceed with the making of these other motions? And because I noticed that this 71 is an amendment to 72, is it not? Is that correct?
Right. The first ordinance that we are going to be taking up is the boarding home ordinance, which is 72. We're going to deal with all of the amendments first to 72.
Okay.
And we'll proceed accordingly. The written amendment that's already in, like from Councilmember Stardick, is on your agenda sheet. So we'll go with that amendment first, and then other amendments that have come in, we will then deal with those amendments, and then we'll vote on the main item.
Thank you.
Okay. So 71 is the amendment that Councilmember Stardick presented on last week. It's in written form, and this is an amendment that is acceptable to the.
Sorry, go ahead. You did.
Acceptable to the chair. And this amendment, just for clarification, this amendment will be attached to each one of the items. Okay, but this is the first one.
So we just need to vote on 71.
Okay. Any discussion on 71? In favor? Opposed? Granted on 71.
Item 72 is an ordinance.
Okay. Now
First?
we're taking up 72, but then we're going to take up Mayor Pro Tem's Cohen amendment on 72. First, do you all have a copy of the amendment?
Y'all should have it. I know you have a lot on your desk. You want to take a second?
There's two different ones.
This is
Got it?
This is amendment to item 72. You should have it in front of you.
Yeah.
I don't have it.
Here.
Just a one-paragraph amendment.
That's it right there.
You don't have it, Councilman?
Okay.
We passed them out to everybody.
This would have been on your table at the beginning of the
You want to share?
They were out of order.
Okay.
Okay.
You want to take a second? Let me just say that this amendment is simply an ordinance. The ordinance as presented would create a second title line, an introduction section in the middle of the listed definitions. So this amendment will clean that up. It's purely a language, not substantive proposal. So that's what it is.
Okay. This is the amendment by Mayor Pro Tem Cohen. It is a technical change.
Yeah.
Doesn't deal with the substance, but a technical change. Okay. I'm seeing several. Councilmember Borkins, are you on the amendment? Councilmember Borkins, are you on the amendment?
Can I speak towards it, or you? No, I support the amendment.
Oh, I see you in
Will
the
you
queue.
plug
Yeah,
in?
I want to speak on the item.
Okay. Councilmember Travis, are you on the amendment?
Yes, on the amendment. I only have a question here because it looks like with the strike-throughs that we're striking through actually an entire section called definitions. Because the way I have this right here, it's struck through.
Right.
Then we also, so I don't know if that's your intent to actually strike through an entire section, because I think there is a section called definitions.
Well, there is.
And we want to keep that.
It's duplicitous.
Because you are.
It
Well, the reason I'm saying is this is a definition that you're adding, right? Number 3.
It's duplicitous. This language is duplicitous. It's already in there. It's
the
already,
definition's in there already.
In another place.
I'm sorry.
So there's 2 places where there's definitions?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
exactly right.
Okay. That's
exactly
my
right.
point.
Thank you.
So we
Yes.
do have, that's good. Thank
Now
you for
there's only
clearing
one
that up.
place.
Yeah.
right. That's why this is not a substantive change. This is just a technical correction. Okay? Any other? Right.
Correct.
This is the amendment the administration supports. Any objection to the amendment to item 72? In favor? Opposed? Granted on the amendment.
And then Councilmember Laster.
Chair recognizes Councilmember Laster for his amendment to item 72.
Thank you, Mayor and colleagues. Colleagues, you will notice that before you have 3 different sets of amendments, and it's basically the same amendment to item number 72, 74, and 76. And in large part, it's the exact same language for each amendment, and it goes into the respective subdivisions and sections for each of those particular items. In short, what this particular amendment attempts to do is to allow for public notice that a completed application for each of the boarding houses, the facilities, and the other facilities in item number 78 have been received by the director of the respective departments that will be administering those particular areas. Two parts of the definition, two parts of the amendment. The first one attempts to define business day as Monday through Friday, as the technical days are usually defined. The second amendment comes in this instance at 28-465, and what it does is basically make paragraph A number 1, and that is the exact same language that you found in your original copy that comes to you. So it will read A1, and then it introduces A2 on the second page. That's where you see the language that says internet posting by the director, and it says this: within 5 business days of the director's receipt and acceptance of the completed application for the issuance or renewal of a permit, the director shall cause to be posted on an internet website hosted by the department and being accessible to the public the following information as contained in the complete application: the department's identification, reference, case, or application number for the application, the name of the operator and owner making the application, and the physical street address and legal description of the real property as contained in the complete application, including but not limited to the subdivision name, the subdivision section number, and the lot and block number on which the boarding home, in this instance, would be situated. In the next ordinance, it says the facility or the lodging facility, and the last is the facility, and those are the terms that are being used in those respective ordinances. And I move this one for this particular ordinance, and I guess I'd like to move all of them at once, but I'll just do that as needed.
Yes, it's acceptable to the administration. Councilmember Borkins.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, considering that District D has, because of the location to the bus stop in the Midtown area, Councilmember Cohen and I both butt against one another, have the majority of boarding houses in the city. I'm going to support Councilmember Laster's amendment because I like what it's doing is notifying residents, and I'm going to make a recommendation, but it's notifying individuals and communities before these, before the homes are put into different communities. But I wish there was a way, and I understand we have the services downtown, Councilmember Cohen, Mayor Pro Tem Cohen. People refer to, all the different services, and that's why we have a lot of boarding houses in our district. But I wish there was a way we can spread them around the city. There's no reason one area should be concentrated with all of the boarding houses. And when you look at the total number that's distributed there in our community, in my district in particular. But Councilmember Laster, I love this amendment, and I look forward to support it. Is there a way that you can add to the amendment? And I'm going to support it as is, but it was a way that as we are notified, but residents, the neighborhoods, and the zip codes, or maybe the council member can be notified immediately to let them know that it's coming, so we can let the people know before the final permit is given by the city.
Well, the council members can certainly look online.
I'm sorry?
Everything is going to be online.
No, I understand that, Mayor, but I'm saying, like, we're sitting at council right now. If somebody putting something online, we may not know it, and then, it's some way we could be notified. A system, a software that will notify the council member that we just accepted this, and you have 5 days.
Mayor?
You have 5 days.
May I shortly respond?
Sure.
Councilmember, thank you for the question. I think there's been an ongoing and intense dialogue behind the scenes about how much information and where and when and all that sort of stuff could be provided, and the mechanics of how that would work. Is the ordinances amendments that I put forward today have been reviewed by all the right parties, and I understand ARA and the administration has accepted this language. So I think this is probably the best we can do at this point in time, and I look forward, and I thank you for your support.
With all due respect, I hear you loud and clear. I just want to be clear what I'm asking. And all I'm asking is, if John Doe go down and apply for District D for a permit, I want to know so I can notify my people in my community, and rather Dwight Boykins is smart enough to go online every day and check, which I'm not going to have time to do. I just don't want that approved without my community having an opportunity to have a conversation. Similar to what we did with Chapter 19.
Well, this particular item doesn't have anything about approval or not. It just merely says that the information will be posted for the public to look and see and find if, in fact, they want to do so. So it will be available a lot quicker than it was being proposed to be available.
Councilmember Travis.
Thank you. Mike, I support all three of your amendments. I'm just wondering, are we going to have such a lengthy explanation on the next two? No. Thank you.
Started.
Councilmember Stardick.
Thank you. I appreciate Councilmember Laster's amendment. I think it's appropriate. I think it's what the community is expecting and wanting. I think, Councilmember Boykins, you have an excellent point. But I think, this doesn't stop us from coming back later and revisiting. That's the amendment that I had submitted, that there's an annual review by the department. So there's another opportunity if the permitting doesn't catch it. There's an actual permitting process that alerts that you can sign up for. So if you don't catch it and this does become a burden of some sort, then we can always revisit it. I don't think this is the end of it.
Can you yield? We yield, Councilman. Yes. The concern I have, and I start off my comments with reminding everybody around the horseshoe, I have more 2 to 3 times than anybody in the city, and they're all in my district. And so I'm speaking from that perspective, that if it was some way we can notify people and have community meetings before. I love what Councilmember Laster's amendment is doing, but I'm speaking from personal experience, not theory.
And if I may, I'll reclaim my
yes,
time. You're talking to someone that's been doing this for 20 plus years, and I used to be the person in District A, in Spring Branch specifically, and Councilmember Knox will tell you the same, that I used to be the person that would review all the permits as they came through, because we never knew what bar or what, this or that might pop up in, near a school or this or whatever it was. So there are people out there, that volunteers, that are willing to also support your staff, I'm sure. But at this point, I think it's a right first step, and we've got to get this moving. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Councilmember Laster, were you back in the queue?
No.
Okay, no. Any other discussion on Councilmember Laster's amendment? In favor? Opposed? Granted with Councilmember Laster's amendment.
Now we have the main item.
And now we are dealing with the main item as amended. The main item, which is 72, as amended. Councilmember Kubash.
Mayor, on the sworn statements that are on the statements, the applicants about the deed restrictions, is there a way to make that a sworn statement instead of just a statement that they've read the restrictions and agreed to the terms therein?
There were a number of stakeholders, meetings, conversations. I think what is before you is the best recommendation that is before us. I think if we, and bear in mind, this has been a carefully crafted item. And we want to make sure that we are in the best position to withstand any sort of legal challenge that comes down the road. And there have been a number of stakeholder meetings out there. I would recommend that we stay with the document.
Well, the homeowners associations, for them to have to go through the legal process of enforcing their restrictions can be relatively costly. Whereas, if a person has signed a sworn affidavit, that's a whole different ball game there. I just was trying to see.
And that's one of the reasons why we're putting it all online, so that they will be able to see. That's the catch-all.
All right.
It will be online, so they can see before the permit is even granted. Okay. Councilmember Knox.
Thank you, Mayor. I had a discussion with ARA about the issue that my colleague, Councilmember Kubash, was talking about. And they've assured me that we can resolve that problem by simply putting a disclaimer on the page, identifying it as a government document, and indicating there are criminal and civil penalties for making false statements on that document. And I believe that will suffice in lieu of a sworn statement. We just want to remove the idea that someone can say, well, I didn't know it was a government document, that kind of thing. Because I think the state law is pretty clear on that. When you make a false representation on a government document, it's a criminal offense.
That is true.
Edwards.
Councilmember Edwards.
Thank you, Mayor. And just for the information of my colleagues who may not have seen, I've had a proposal that I've sent over to the mayor and the administration regarding looking at a phase 2 element of what we're doing here to regulate and make the buildings safer, we also have to make sure that we're keeping our community safe and investing in people who might be vulnerable after having been released from prison. And so I've proffered a recommendation that we will be considering in the coming months and more toward the end of the year, which highlights the need to make sure that we're combating recidivism by providing job opportunities and training to those people now that we will have them registered in terms of those houses, instead of just have it be a regulatory paradigm whereby we're only looking at the building safety. We'll have the other element where we're building human capital. And so I know that's been a number of people's concern, and so I've put forth some additional recommendations as to how we can do that. We already have a program here at the city, CRMP, that's administered through the Department of Health that could be part of that extension, in which we are actually facilitating opportunities for people to sign up for workforce training and sign up for job and education training opportunities as they come available. So instead of just leaving a pamphlet for somebody, which they may or may not look at, really facilitating those connection points and having that be part of their agreement as well.
Thank you, and look forward to working with you and Public Health Department on all of that. Councilmember Laster.
Thank you, Mayor. May I direct a question to the city attorney?
Sure.
Mr. Lewis, is to partially address Councilmember Kubash's question, and I think Mr. Knox's response. It's my understanding that in the presentation of an unsworn declaration, that under the state law, and I've not read the state law directly, that can be prosecuted if there is false information in that. Is that correct?
Well, I'm not sure about the state law. What I understand is that our ordinances already provide that there's punishment for making a false statement on an application, and so this concept is already captured in the law here at the city.
So we would regard any misstatement on those forms as a lie. The only word I can come up with is a lie, or a misstatement on the falsifying government document, and we would potentially be supportive of prosecution of that. Is that correct?
We would consider it, if it violates the standard of the ordinance, if it's materially false, then we would have the ability to deny the application, and you'd be able to apply those penalties that we're entitled to do as a city. We wouldn't be able to prosecute them under a state law. That would be up to the district attorney to take such a charge.
And I think that falsification in that instance on the unsworn declaration is also grounds for revocation of the permit, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
Making a materially false statement on a permit application is grounds for denying the permit.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Lewis.
Councilmember Kubash.
Thank you, Mayor. The city attorney laid that out, came over and talked to me about it. I appreciate that. Mayor, a few years ago, council talked a number of times about trying to get all of the documents from different homeowner associations and deed restrictions on a website, and I still would like to see that happen, and I would certainly like to see that happen, and I think Councilmember Laster supports me, and so does Stardick. So thank you, Mayor, if we can come up with that.
Thank you. Any other discussion on item 72 as amended? In favor? Opposed? Granted as amended.
Item 73 is the written motion by Councilmember Stardick. Just need a vote.
On item 73, this is the amendment that's being attached to each one of these ordinances from Councilmember Stardick. Any discussion on 73? Discussion? In favor? Opposed? Granted. And then there's some additional.
74 is an ordinance.
Okay, and then the amendment by Chair recognizes Councilmember Laster on his amendment to item 74.
Same information I provided for 72. I put forth this amendment, same language.
Right. Any discussion on the amendment to 74 by Councilmember Laster? In favor? Opposed? Granted on the amendment. Now the chair recognizes, is there another amendment?
No, not for this
No,
one.
we
Oh.
voted on,
Okay.
item 74 as amended.
Now we're on item 74 as amended. Discussion on item 74 as amended. In favor, opposed, granted on 74.
Okay, 75 is the motion by, a written motion by Councilmember Stardick. Just need a vote.
Again, the amendment by Councilmember Stardick on item on ordinance 76. Discussion. In favor, opposed, granted on item 75.
Item 76 is an ordinance,
Collins?
and then you have
Well-
Laster's amendment, proposed amendment.
And Collins. Do you have Collins?
Was it on the first one?
No, it was a last minute one.
Oh, I didn't get it.
Okay, we're on item 76, but first we'll take up the Mayor Pro Tem Cohen's amendment to item 76. Chair recognizes Mayor Pro Tem Cohen on her amendment to item 76.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, I'm just going to remind everyone they should have this in front of them. Is there anyone that doesn't have the amendment in front of them? You don't? Councilmember Knox should have it.
Should be the amendment to item 76, the whereas clauses.
You now have it. Anybody else? Okay, because I'm not going to read all the whereases. So do you need a minute or two to read? Whereas? Okay. So I move to amend item 76 by replacing the whereas clauses that read as follows, and you have it in front of you.
Mayor, and would you please explain the purpose of your amendment?
No. No, I'm just joking. I'm joking. Everybody relax. It's been a long morning. In terms of the legal aspects of anything on here, I'm going to defer to the city attorney. So he can go in depth a little bit more on some of these.
So you're the sponsor?
I am the sponsor. And I also can read you all the whereases and give you some explanation. But it's far better if the city attorney does.
City Attorney Ron Lewis.
The whereas clauses express the reasons for the policy reasons for and the policy findings of the council for the adoption of the ordinance, and so they reflect those conclusions, the factual conclusions and policy conclusions that support the underlying ordinance.
It also, okay, it supports the rationale, especially on the distance requirement. It also goes to what Councilman Boydkins was saying, that there's a high concentration of many of these facilities in many communities. It talks about the fact that we are all trying to enhance public safety for the people who are living in these homes, but also for the people that are living within the city and in these various communities. And so it talks about the public safety concerns and the rationale for it. I know there's been conversation about people being concerned about not providing housing for individuals coming, let's say, from TDCJ, but I will tell you, the ordinance grandfathers many, if not most, of those facilities are ready. And then I had my list of facilities that are in Dallas. Where's my number? I had it with me. I thought I had it. Anyway, there are about, let's say that there are about 90 plus facilities in Houston already. 99 facilities in Houston already. In Dallas, there are about 30, and in San Antonio, there are about 3. So this is not an intent to try to deny people with their housing situation. Yes, in terms of alternative housing facility, in Houston, it's 99. Austin, 34. Dallas, 30. Fort Worth, 13. Temple, 8. Waco, 7. Burleson, 5. San Angelo, 5. Abilene, 4. And Garland, 4. And so in our city, there's a high concentration in many of our communities. Many of these communities are already heavily burdened already. So this is the way to, we're enhancing the safety of the facilities themselves for people who are living there, but at the same time, we're being sensitive to public safety concerns in the communities where these facilities are. And we are doing our best to strike a very delicate balance, because when people are coming back from TDCJ, they face two obstacles. One is housing and one is employment. And that's why, going back to what Councilmember Ed was saying, it's important that we beef up our second chance program, Councilman Borkins, our reentry program, and so we have to approach it in a very holistic way. This is just one piece of many pieces. So that's in part the rationale for this amendment being presented by Mayor Pro Tem Cohen. Councilmember Laster?
No, I just have a question, if I may, for
Okay, sure.
Mr. Lewis. I have not read in great detail the original whereases. I would imagine that there is some change in this set of whereases that necessitated the amendment. Could you speak to that?
I think we've just worked to tighten them up and
Make it more distinct and direct?
Make sure that the analytics were precise and correct.
Right. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Stoddard?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm very supportive of this. It gives the data that a lot of people were concerned about. It outlines that the Houston Police Department crime data that's available online, as people like to tell everyone else. But this says also too that the criminal activity within a 1,000-foot radius of an alternative housing facility, that there's a higher than average occurrence from the Houston Police Department. It says that it says determined that 441 square miles of the city, 66% of the city's total area, does not fall within the 1,000-foot restriction. They were showing maps at Chambers yesterday that they were including the park space, which no one can have. It's not habitable. So there's been a lot of thought and a lot of work, almost a year's worth of work from my team, ARA, HPD, the administration. Everyone has been working very hard on these ordinances, and we've had public meetings. I want to make sure that Laura Cottingham and Catherine Bruning from ARA are recognized for their lots of meetings and work, a lot of work. The group home ordinances are important to our city. The citizens have asked for these ordinances. We've been asking for these for years. Mayor, I'm sure you've heard about them for years as you're in your former position. The 20 years that I've been involved. And Councilmember Boykins, it impacts everyone, no matter what the situation is. But when you cluster them, it creates a hardship not only on the community, but for those that are living there. It makes it even harder for those that are. Make sure that was on the record. But I think it's important for people to understand that it's like poverty on poverty. You don't want to continue to poverty on poverty. That doesn't help anyone. It's the same thing with this issue. You want people to be in a positive environment as much as we can make it, but at the same time, we don't want to negatively impact a community where you've got 5 on one street, is what I'd heard. I'd heard that you had, I think one of our staffers had told me that her mother's house is on a street with 5 or 7, and it just doesn't, it's not productive. So I think, once again, Mayor Pro Tem, I think this amendment is exactly what we need to make sure that people understand the intent years from now, and that when we come back for that annual review process, whatever the administration decides that to be, that we understand what the intent was, our intent here at this chamber, because I can tell you in 2010, I remember what the intent of a lot of the ordinances we passed were, but maybe y'all weren't involved at that moment in time. So I think it's very important that we continue to support and protect everyone that are the residents that are in and around these facilities, these group homes, in and around. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion on the amendment? Any other discussion? In favor, opposed, granted on the amendment of Mayor Pro Tem Cohen to item 76. Now we're on item 76. I'm sorry, last year's amendment. Councilmember Laster, his amendment on item 76.
Thank you, Mayor. And again, for the third time, I make the same amendment to this item. And I would just like to add I want to thank ARA and all of the folks that have been involved in this process, the legal department that have spent a lot of time working with all the council members trying to answer our questions. Thank you, Mayor, for bringing this forward. Councilmember Stardig and all of us have been correct in the sense that this is a long time coming, and I think this is a good beginning to bringing equity across the board and safety and security and peacefulness for all of those that take advantage of these homes or need to be in these homes. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Now we're on Councilmember Laster's amendment. Any other discussion on Councilmember Laster's amendment to item 76? In favor or opposed? Granted on Councilmember Laster's amendment. Now we're on item 76 as amended. Item 76 as amended. Discussion. Councilmember Robinson.
Thank you, Mayor. I think I love the way this is going. I think this is an appropriate step. The amendments proffered today, I think, are right on the money and good for us. In particular, Councilmember Stardig, I think your notion of reviewing this after a year is really helpful for what that's going to show in a year. I think the discussion we had yesterday during the public session was helpful for some of the maps, and I think the one speaker who spoke of the 1,000-foot radius, Mayor, is something that I know was a little bit of back and forth regarding the accuracy of the map and the data. I think that is something that maybe remains to be tested or seen in the coming year. So I think that's one of those things that I would like to pay special attention to. It does, when you're increasing the radius, that does increase the area exponentially to the degree. So I want to make sure that that's in line with the intention of the administration and fair by all of those who might want to weigh in on the situation. So I support the item as amended and think we're on the verge of something really strong here.
Thank you, Councilman Robinson. And we do want to be sensitive to everyone. We're not trying to punish and be unduly harsh. So we'll evaluate and assess as we go forward. Councilmember Borkins. Councilmember Borkins.
Thank you, Mayor.
I'm sorry. I'm Councilmember Knox, then Councilmember Borkins.
Once again, Mayor, I just wanted to say that I've discussed with ARA about the little addendum that we want to put on these applications in referencing our city legal. We want to make sure that it's not only the city that the person is going to have to deal with, but there is a possibility of a county charge, and that is located in the Texas Penal Code, Chapter 37, regarding falsification of documents. I just want to make sure that people making these applications understand that there'll be perhaps civil penalties in the case of city ordinances, and then perhaps criminal penalties may be allowed on these signatures. So,
thank you very much. Now, Councilmember Borkins.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Mayor. Councilman Stardig, I look forward. I love that idea of reviewing them after a year. I think that's only appropriate. Almost like how they sunset agencies in Austin. Really, you need to be able to review and make some changes. But as the mayor made reference to the Second Chance Jobs program that I came up with when I first got here, you learn a lot, and you learn there are people who need second chances in many ways. And part of that is when they come out, for those who made mistakes, the system require them to go into homes and not go back to their neighborhood for a period of time. And what you typically find are people who can't find a job, can't find anywhere to live, and then that's when they go to roaming in your neighborhood. So we have learned a lot. There are a lot of companies that will step up. There are a lot of companies that are stepping up to try to assist. I support the need for housing because it needs to happen. I just want the distribution to be fair across the city and not just concentrate in one area. I understand services are pretty much in my district, and that's why we typically have quite a few homes compared to other neighborhoods. But I just, I want to keep that on the forefront. And Councilmember Stardig's amendment, I think, is just awesome, and I'm glad you came up with that. But I don't want people to lose focus that there are people out there who need help and who need alternative living, and they need somewhere to go once they're released, and they need somewhere to go even if they're not incarcerated, if they're going through drug treatment and those mental illness type issues, that we got to place them somewhere. And I just want to make sure neighborhoods are aware that they're coming. And I think most neighborhoods will be sensitive to it. may not get a 100% support, unanimous support, but you will get people who understand, because most people in this city know someone or have someone in their family that's going through transition. So, no, I take that very serious, and I just think we need to stay focused on trying to do what's right for everybody. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Cisneros.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to just give a big thank you to the communities that I represent who have been so active in this conversation. They've done so much research and have been very, very well spoken, and I think they've helped. They've certainly helped guide me and others here at this table. But I support this. I'm also glad that we're having the chance to, for the annual review, to fine tune and make sure that this is being administered in a fair way. But looking at what other cities do, we are not. I don't think we're overreacting here. I mean, it looks like we're much less conservative than some other cities, regarding the alternate housing facility ordinance. So I think it's very reasonable and something that that I'm very happy to support, and just really appreciate the time that you've given this, Mayor, for lots of community input and others as well. And Jeff Reichman, I wanted to just also say thank you to you. I think by the end of the day, I'm hearing that the city map and the map you had actually aligned very, very closely. They came together, though maybe different results were being interpreted from that material. So I think there's still some room for conversation about that. And just again, I'm glad for the opportunity we'll have for an annual review. Thank you.
Councilmember Starling.
Just the last comment. I just want to make sure that I recognize the near North Side community, former Councilmember Gracie Sines, the leadership in your community, Councilmember Cisneros, many of the communities that have worked on this for many years, but also they took the initiative and stuck with it. So we really want to make sure. But Mayor, I also want to make sure that I really need to make sure that Andy Kahn is recognized for his work and diligence on his passion for this issue. So thank you again, and thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, and we're getting ready to vote on this item. But I do want to note there are about 13,000 individuals that are released from TDCJ every year that come back to the Houston-Harris County area. 13,000, okay, coming specifically to the Houston-Harris County area. And we're about to vote on this. And I think it's going to be unanimous. But I want to say something. I want to say something now. In order to stop the flow, you have to invest on the front end. And that's why I'm very sensitive to the youth program. Because if we don't invest on them on the front end, the pool is going to keep coming. You got to invest in them on the front end. And so, as much as we're going to do this will not stop the flow. What stops the flow is when we take kids in many of these communities and we provide them with job opportunities, we teach them ethics, they know the meaning of work, they are engaged, and we invest. That's how we're going to stop the flow. If not, they're going to keep coming. They're going to keep coming. And I don't care what we put in place here, they're going to go someplace. Okay? That was just, my editorial.
May not have as a member.
I think Councilmember Stardick. Councilmember Cisneros.
Well, just to comment on your editorial, I think that is the most important infrastructure investment we can make.
Thank you. And so I just know Rebecca's going to pick that up, and it's going to be a highlight. I can feel Rebecca writing in her spirit. Let me see if she done tweeted it out already. All right. In favor, opposed, granted on item 76.
76 as amended.
Does that wrap us up?
That wraps us up.
That completes the items for the agenda.
Okay, that completes the agenda. Thank you all so very, very much. The pop-off, we start with Councilmember Christie.